Thank you guys so much for coming out to my presentation today. Today I'm going to be talking about pattern building and how it is in board games, but before we dive deep into that, let me give you a little pregame analogy. Now, pattern building is seen a lot in sports, particularly soccer. It is seen in many different ways in soccer. For example, there's corner kicks where there's different designs and different build-up plays through the corner kicks. But also you see it throughout the entire game of soccer where the defense passes around, builds it up to the midfield, and then they would pass it around, build it up from the midfield to the attackers. The attackers would hopefully look to score. There's different levels of build-up in the game of soccer. But as I just described, it's in sports, but now let me give you an example of how it is in board games. Now, in board games, instead of kicking a soccer ball around, they use tile placement, as you can see here in this game, tile, which I will be talking to you about shortly. Most pattern building games use tile placement. Almost every single one actually uses some sort of tile placement in order to play the game. The strategy in every single pattern building game is that you must attack and defend at the same time. You got to be conscious of what your opponent is doing, and you also got to build your attack as well as defend the other person and what they're doing. In sports, almost every single sport, either one team is attacking and one team is defending. You don't see that in this type of game. Like I said, you have to attack and defend at the same time, which is fairly unique. Now, I just talked about how this is Taiyu. Let me dive deep into what Taiyu actually is. Taiyu is a stone placing pattern build-up game. It was made in 1999. It is a Chinese-based game. Basically, you place tiles down with these squiggly lines. Those squiggly lines are waterways. The goal of those waterways is to get to the edges of a 19 by 19 grid. One player is going north and south, and the other player is going east and west. Basically, the player and the scoring of this game is where you would multiply the number of waterways you have exiting on the north and the south, or for the other opponent would be east and west. So if I go back a slide, in this example, as you can see, there's 4 waterways exiting on the top and 2 on the bottom. Basically, you would multiply those together to get a score of 8, and for the other opponent, they have 4 on the western side, 0 on the eastern side, so they would have a score of 0. So player 1, or the guy going north and south, would win the game. Like I said before, the strategy of this game is you have to attack and defend at the same time. You have to be wary of what your opponent is doing. You have to make sure that you're building up in the right way and also defending on what they're doing. It is a very strategical game, very fun to play. And yeah, now my next game I want to be talking to you about is more recent, and some of you may know what this game actually is based on playing it, and that game is called Quirkle. Now Quirkle is another pattern building game, but it's a colorful pattern building game in which you place tiles and lines in order to create this. Now what this is exactly is how you play Quirkle. So basically you have to match, and a line of 6 is the end goal, but in lines of either the same shape or the same color. So as you can see here, it's the same shape, which is a square, and your goal is 6. There's only 5, so they're almost complete. But in this case, you see a line of yellow, and that is a line of 6, so that is completely complete. So that would be a point for one of the players, and basically the goal of the game is to create the most lines of 6 similarities. Again, the same strategy, you must attack and defend at the same time. Very fun game to play. But the scoring, like I said, is different. You must create lines, and however many lines you have wins. But in Taiyu, like I said before, it's dimensional calculation, and in this game it's just lines. So that's one difference between the 2 games. Now my next and final game I'm going to be talking to you about is more like Taiyu, in which the calculations are more dimensional. And that game is called King Domino. Now King Domino is a region building, kingdom expanding game. It was made in 2016. Basically how you connect your kingdoms is if you place the same regions next to each other, so you must connect the same regions. So this piece is a grassland piece, this that grassland piece must connect to another grassland piece. It cannot be touching a desert piece, a water piece, etc. pieces. It must be touching a grassland piece. You can have pieces where this is connecting to that, it just can't connect to the desert piece, like I said. And the goal is to create the biggest dimension of the word of kingdom while having the most crowns. So, and how you score that is, say you have a 3x3 kingdom, you would multiply those two together, and you would multiply it by how many crowns you have on the kingdom. So say you, like I said, a 3x3 grid, and you have 2 crowns on the 3x3 grid, you would have a score of 18 points, because 3 times 3 is 9 times 2 would be 18, and you would have 18 points there. That is, like I said, very similar to the scoring of Taiyu, but it's different in the fact of purple, which in fact is one of my similarities and differences between these 3 games, is that Taiyu and Kingdomino has similar scoring, but it's different to Taiyu. But inside the similarities, there's differences between the scoring. Like in Kingdomino, there's an extra piece to it where it's also based on crown, the amount of crowns you have in your dimensions, while in Taiyu it's just the dimensions you have. Another difference, is that the design, as you can see, Taiyu much earlier made in 1999, looks more ancient, looks more older, and then as you can see, as you get closer to the present day, in 2006, Quirkle more vibrant, more colorful, looks more appealing to the eye, and then Kingdomino, the most recent game in 2016, is completely vibrant, completely filled with color. The design of the game looks better. Now, some similarities is that all 3 of these games and almost all pattern building games use tile placement. It's seen in every game. You pretty much need it in order to create a pattern building game. And like I said many times, is that the strategy is that you must attack and defend at the same time. That's how you play the game. That's how you win. But before, and how I'm going to end off is I'm going to read off a little sentence and decipher it back to my soccer analogy, which is, in the sentence is, pattern building games are always advancing but maintain similarities throughout the years. Going back to my soccer example, soccer is always advancing. You always see new additions. You always see new, the balls have advanced, the type of cleats have advanced. We now have shin guards, and back then they didn't have shin guards. Now we do. But overall, the same rules and concepts still apply to soccer. The same rules back then are very similar to how they are now, and that's the same way with pattern building board games. That yes, it is different back then, but overall the same concepts and same rules are still here today. But I just want to say thank you guys so much for attending my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it and found it informational. Thank you.